The Edmonton Oilers losing streak is up to 5, dropping a frustrating one to the Florida Panthers, and the sky might be falling.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This Friday edition of Locked On Oilers. I am your host, Nick Zararis. I want to thank everyone who is making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, where right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So on today's show, we're going to walk through this loss to the Florida Panthers. We're going to start with just an overall when it rains, it pours. We're going to move along and why I think the Oilers' confidence is really starting to fray and why it feels like they're kind of swimming against the current, if you will. And then in our final segment, we'll tackle how the Oilers can go about manifesting a hard reset in the middle of a season. So with that in mind, and I said this on yesterday's show, I said it on the national show today with Hunter Hodes, it is okay to be frustrated. I understand being frustrated. At the same time, when you are mired in a funk like this, when you are playing bad hockey and everything that can go wrong is seemingly going wrong, you're in a funk. And it's not just that you're playing poorly. It's that even when you're trying to make the right play, it doesn't go as smoothly as it needs to. You know, your pass isn't crisp. It's not hitting someone on the stick. You're putting it in a bad spot where it's handcuffing the person who's about to receive it. And I don't want to get too existential here. You know, this is the regular season. It is February. The Oilers have afforded themselves some leeway, and some adversity is good. You know, I've talked a lot over the course of the year so far that the Oilers, it's okay to lose some games here and there, to have some difficult losses, because that's how you build. You know, it's how you calcify. It's how you scab over on wounds. It's how you get stronger in the gym. You know, you got to tear away a little muscle to get bigger. And it's not just that the Oilers are losing. You know, everyone loses. No one goes 82-0. No one goes 75-7. Everyone's going to lose at least 20 some odd games in the regular season unless you have a truly generational year, you know, once every 5 to 10 year type run, like what the Bruins did a couple years ago, what the Lightning did a couple years before that. You're not going to get a team that flirts with 120 plus standings points every year. You know, that's an every few years type deal. Most of the time you win a President's Trophy, you're going to be 112, 113, 114, somewhere in that ballpark for standings points. That's a lot of points. Don't get me wrong. But for the most part, a lot of teams are going to have these highs and lows. And it's both unfortunate and fortunate that the Oilers are having this when they are. It's fortunate in the perspective that they have afforded themselves some leeway. You know, they've built themselves a decent points cushion to mitigate some of the existential struggle of a multi-game losing streak. You know, losing 5 in a row. There are some teams that couldn't withstand that. You know, if you were the Flames coming into tonight's game, if you were one of those teams in the East, you know, you were the Blue Jackets, the Red Wings, the Senators, the Rangers, the Islanders. You lose 5 in a row at this point on that side of the bracket, your season's over. You aren't going to have enough games left to make up that point deficit. And the drawback is the Oilers don't have a ton of time here. They are not in a position where they can wait out whatever this funk is. And in a long season, you're afforded some of those opportunities where you can kind of wait out a funk. You've got 23 regular seasons games remaining. By the time you're watching this or listening to this episode on Friday, the Oilers will be a week away from the NHL trade deadline next Friday. And the Oilers are going to have really difficult decisions to come to. And a lot of that is going to be, how much do you believe in this dip? You know, when we talk about it in terms of the stock market, you know, how much do you believe in this dip, that this is closer to what the Oilers actually are versus a bad run? And, you know, market factors will dictate how things go. There are certain things that are separate of that stock price that aren't going to be able to be controlled by, an earnings report or a technological breakthrough. But the Oilers are definitely trending in the wrong direction, but it is not, at least I don't think it's fatal. I don't think the Oilers over the last week and a half have entirely forgotten how to play hockey. I think they have some issues that we can address. The goaltending has been very suspect. That Nate Schmidt goal, you want that one back if you're Stuart Skinner. That's got to be saved. In a game like this, against this quality of opponent, that's got to be saved. I think it's fair to say the Oilers looked pretty damn slow tonight. They weren't winning a lot of foot races. They weren't getting to pucks first. And when you are consistently getting the puck second, you're not going to get a lot of possession. And you can be as big and as strong as you want. You can block shots. You can throw hits. If you're not winning foot races over the course of a game, that does start to accumulate. And I think there's no better sign of the fact that Florida wore them down was the fact that they managed to draw so many penalties. Florida drew 6 penalties, and I'll give credit where it's due. I've been on the floor on the Oilers power play, penalty kill for the last few days. That it's been really rough, especially going back to that Colorado game. Going into tonight's action, they'd conceded 5 power play goals on their last 12 penalty kill opportunities. Tonight, you go 6 for 6. That's something you can hang your hat on, and that's what's frustrating about this. The Oilers didn't get off to a good start, but they got multiple give-me's. You got multiple freebies. You got a goal disallowed. You killed off an early power play. You get those 2 things. That's supposed to be a shot in the arm. That's supposed to be a kick in the butt to be like, all right, we're in this game. We started slow, but we still have a chance. We can make some plays. And the Oilers, for a majority of this game, just did not look comfortable. And look, some of that is, you got to give credit where it's due. Florida is a good hockey team. Even without Matthew Tkachuk, Carter Verhaeghe's having a rough year. Even with that, the Panthers are a good hockey team. They play good, fundamentally disciplined hockey that makes the Oilers and makes a lot of teams around the NHL actively uncomfortable. And it's something the Oilers are going to have to adapt their game to over time. This is what playoff hockey looks like. There's not a lot of room. You got to make decisions faster than you want to. You have to work really hard for offense. You got to get those 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 offensive zone passes in a row together just to get one good offensive zone look. And it is hard sledding to live like that. It is really hard to string together 8 passes in a row without turning the puck over or missing a pass or bobbling a pass. With that, it makes it so much harder to create offense, and especially because the Oilers aren't built for that. They don't have Warren Fogle anymore. And look, I understand in a vacuum why the Oilers thought Arvidsson for Fogle would be an upgrade. And skill set wise, Arvidsson's got a better track record at the NHL level of point production, but he's also not a grinder. He's not going to win forechecking. He's not going to cycle too aggressively. It's really a conundrum. Same thing with Jeff Skinner and the Ryan McLeod spot. McLeod a little bit more well-rounded, a little bit more upside potential. I know McLeod's not having a great year with the Sabres, but at the very least, you got to think about the Oilers. They lack foot speed, and it's crazy to say that on a team that has Connor McDavid, but the Oilers are slow. That third line in particular had a really rough night tonight. The Henry, Connor Brown, Janmark group, that wasn't very impressive. And look, the last thing I'll leave you with before we wrap this segment, when you are on a prolonged losing streak, everything that seems bad about your team feels about 10 times worse. Everything that feels wrong about your team. So if you're the Oilers, that's your defense, that's your goaltending, that's your secondary offense. When you are in a funk like this, it feels like not only can your stars not get going, you can't get that occasional Adam Henrique goal or Ryan Nugent-Hopkins goal or Connor Brown goal. And you had an injury situation tonight. Nurse couldn't play. Klingberg drew back in after going out last game for Stetcher. And I didn't think Klingberg was awful. He had 2 points, but the defense is worrisome. It is not confidence inspiring. I don't really trust any of the Oilers defensive pairs to protect the lead or to protect the tie game. It's just they do not control the game particularly well. You know, we'll have to have a conversation at some point next week about Mattias Ekholm, who's been trending in the wrong direction since early January. He got really, really badly outmuscled on the Carter Verhaeghe goal that ended up being the difference in this game. But I did not feel great about the Oilers game from the very jump. Even after killing off that penalty and getting the goal disallowed, it just did not seem like the Oilers had a good game in them tonight. So with that in mind, we're going to take our first break of today's edition Locked On Oilers. When we come back, we're going to talk about why I think the Oilers' confidence is starting to reach a tipping point and why they probably aren't out of the woods just yet. So be sure to stick around. When the game tips off, NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whenever I'm watching sports with my friends, we love a squad ride trying to manifest a comeback. Or if we just got a feeling about somebody making a big play, like a clutch 3, we never feel like we missed a chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid out instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out on this Friday edition of Locked On Oilers as we are in the midst of the Oilers' longest losing streak since 2021-2022. And I'm going to say this for a third time on this episode because I do think it's important to emphasize, to make sure you get. When you're playing really well, all of the good things about your team seem apparent. You know, a month or two, I'd say about a month ago, when the Oilers were really, really humming and finding ways to win, winning in a variety of ways, Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard doing just enough, the defense not having to do a whole lot, the offense controlling possession, taking advantage of teams on the counter. And now they're playing pretty poorly, so they can't get their counterattack going because teams aren't respecting them in the defensive zone. Because of that, they're getting hemmed in their own zone longer. They're putting pressure on their own defense for longer. And because the defensemen have to make more plays, they're turning the puck over more. They're failing to exit the zone cleanly. So that means forwards have to stay in the zone longer. They have to chase the puck. They have to win the puck back and then try and facilitate another zone exit. And when you are playing a team like Florida that wants to do that, you know, Florida wants to get going downhill. They want to keep you in your own end. They want to play along the boards. They want to crash the net. They want to outwork you and they want to out effort you. And when you are struggling the way the Oilers are, it is really difficult to get in that mental mindset of, okay, we're going to win this fight. We are going to win this fight. We are going to win this fight. Because when you are thinking it, when you're stressing out, you are not at your best. You know, the best type of play is instinctual, where someone doesn't even have to think about it. And when I can, and it's important I say this, when I am watching the game on TV and I can actively see the player trying to read the play to make a sequence, they're going too slow. That is not an indictment, like I'm some oracle, you know, like I can see the play happening before it comes. But when I can see a player processing where to go with the puck on TV, which is already on a delay and comes across slower than it does when you're watching in person, the other team can see that too. And the other team is able to influence the game in a way that me yelling at the TV can't. And the Oilers were thoroughly outplayed in this game. Even I give a ton of credit to Leon for really trying his absolute best. The goal he scored tonight, absolutely remarkable big boy stuff. He put his head down, he drove the net, he scored. He did everything in his power to make something happen tonight. You give all the credit in the world to Leon for making that happen. But even after the Oilers tied this game, I never felt like the Oilers were going to be able to get a big lead. Even if they get the third goal and they get it to 3-2 after being down, you wouldn't have felt good about that going down the back half of this game. The Oilers defense is way too erratic, and by proxy, that makes the goaltending, which is already volatile, all the more erratic. And I know the conversation coming out of this week, going into next week, the week of the trade deadline, is going to teeter on deafening as far as the Oilers going out and adding a third goalie. Even if you drop a new goalie into this team, I'm not necessarily sure that's going to get them out of the woods. As much as I think Stuart Skinner has struggled over the last few weeks, I don't think the Oilers at large are really getting to their game. That third line has really struggled. That fourth line has really struggled. Connor hasn't been great since coming back from the Four Nations break. And look, some of it is bad luck. I know there's the stat floating around that the Oilers have like 40% of the goal share and McDavid minutes away from Leon Draisaitl, but it's also worth pointing out that in those minutes, the Oilers are getting like 867 goaltending, which is an atrocity, which is what you would expect from an AHL goalie playing at the NHL level. So look, I am not quite at, DEFCON 5 where like the nuclear submarines are ready to go. I am definitely worried. I think the Oilers have the experience and the resolve to kind of steer themselves out of this. If you've seen the movie Cars, you remember when Doc tells Lightning, you start going so hard right, you go left. That's kind of how the Oilers need to get through this. It's not swimming against it. It's not trying to steer against it. It's going with it, finding a way to adapt what you're doing to be successful. If you need another metaphor, you think about the signs you see at the beach about avoiding rip tides, that if you get caught in one, you got to swim perpendicular away from the current, not towards the shore, because if you try and swim against that riptide, you are going to tire yourself out and it's going to be worse. And I think that's one of the telltale signs of a hockey team that is really struggling with confidence, is that the structure breaks down, guys start panicking, guys start trying to make plays outside of structure, and that's where it breaks down. You don't take 6 penalties in a game if you're playing good structural defense. If you're not reaching, if you're not going out of position to try and make something happen because you're feeling that pressure, you're feeling that stress of the team underperforming, you are going to end up in situations like this. Again, all the kudos in the world to the Kill for going 6 for 6. That is definitely an accomplishment against a team like Florida. But at the same time, that tells me the Oilers were not playing a great game tonight. It tells me they were not as precise and as disciplined as they needed to be. And those are core tenets of good structural hockey. And the Oilers are not, this is not the 1980 Soviet Olympic team as far as rigid fundamental structure. So much of what makes the Oilers great is their star players' improvisation. It's Connor off the rush, it's Leon off the rush, and the auxiliary players on those respective lines taking advantage of the fact that those guys pull defenders towards them, that they have their own gravitational pull. And I just did not feel good about this game by any measure. You're not going to find a silver lining here. You've lost 5 in a row now. You got Carolina next, who is still a good team. You're not that far away from your New York trip, where the Islanders, Devils, and Rangers are all going to be dying for wins because they are all in pretty tense playoff spots. It is not easy. What the road ahead for the Oilers is not easy. And when you're struggling confidence-wise, everything seems difficult. I hate to do when you played sports, but you think about when you were going through a little bit of a slump in Little League, you're gripping the bat a little bit too tight, you're overthrowing the ball to first base on a ground ball, you're overthinking it just a bit. That's your enemy. You don't want to think, you want to do. When you are making good plays, they are instinctual, they are habitual. You have the muscle memory from hundreds, of tens of thousands of hours of playing that sport. We're talking about guys 27 years old, 30 years old, been playing hockey 20-something years. We're talking tens, if not hundreds of thousands of hours of muscle memory committed to it. And when your confidence goes, you can't fall back on that muscle memory because you start second guessing yourself. And the Oilers right now, way too much thinking, not enough playing. We're going to take our second and final break of today's show. When we come back, I'm going to give you the recipe for a hard in-season reset right after this. If you're like me, your mornings have to start with a good cup of coffee. But I got tired of settling for grocery store brands that just weren't hacking it. That's why I turned to Trade. And let me tell you, this coffee's next level. Trade is the #1 specialty coffee marketplace in the U.S., bringing you fresh coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. Their experts have taste tested thousands of coffees, curating over 450 amazing roasts. Whether you're new to coffee or know exactly what you like, they'll handpick the perfect match for you. Trade has a quiz where in under a minute they can match you with a roast that is fresh, smells incredible, and tastes even better. The subscription makes it so easy. No more last-minute grocery store runs or settling for whatever's in the pantry. If you don't love your first bag, no worries. Trade will replace it for free until they get it just right. Right now, Trade is exclusively offering our listeners 40% off your first order at drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl. That's drinktrade, TRADE.com/lockedonnhl for 40% off your first order. One more time, drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out on this Friday edition of Locked On Oilers as we set the tone for what is going to be a really important stretch of games. You have Carolina, Anaheim, Montreal, then the trade deadline, and then Dallas. With that in mind, you have 6 days. You have 6 days to decide what this team needs. I think at this point, and I really don't like doing this because I understand why members of the media have to maintain their professional relationships. They need their access. It's important. At this point, anybody who is trying to defend the Oilers' goaltending situation is not acting in your best interest. As much as I like Stuart Skinner, the person, and I do, I fundamentally think if the Oilers go into the playoffs with the Skinner-Pickard tandem again, they are setting themselves up for just what you've seen over these last 4 games since coming back from the break. Neither of these guys is consistently going to be able to elevate the team around them. And look, there are not a lot of goalies in this sport who can elevate their team around them, but Skinner is actively sinking them in these games, and it hurts because you know Skinner has good hockey in him, but it is ripping your hair out of your head levels of frustrating when you watch a goalie who you know has the capacity of playing good hockey forget how to play hockey. And I saw his comments after the game. He said he feels pretty good. He's not really worried about it mentally. He just needs to play better. And I'm glad that this is not a confidence thing where, you got to get your mojo back, because that's a whole lot harder. Sometimes, you're just not having your best game. And look, we all know Skinner's weaknesses. His lateral agility is not great. Lateral agility is really, really the most important and frankly difficult trait for a goalie to have. But I was reading someone's breakdown the other day, and I forget who it was, but they articulated the reason Skinner has such a difficult time moving post to post is because he usually has to swing his arms to kind of drive himself to go in the direction he's trying to go. And because of that, it's really hard for him to regain his base if he's swinging his entire body to try and get over, because you're going to be a little off balance because you're trying to rock to swing your momentum that way. It makes it a lot harder to regain your positioning. It makes you susceptible to rebounds. It makes you susceptible to second chances, when guys crash the net down low. So with that in mind, it's real simple. I hate to give my Little League coach when I was in 5th grade credit, but it worked. And I know coaches will do this from time to time at every level. The Rangers did this in I want to say the 2014-2015 playoffs when they lost to the Lightning in the conference final. But their coach, teams have right their lineup card on the dry erase board in the locker room. Some teams use an electric one now. Some teams use magnets. But On the dry erase board, you usually have your starting lineup, and you roll your lines and your pairs that are on that dry erase board, and that's how guys know who they're playing with. In some cases, it's how guys find out they're in or out of the lineup. The mentality now, after a losing streak like this, is clean slate. What does that mean? I'm so glad you asked. The clean slate mentality is that everything up until this point hasn't happened. We're starting with a clean slate. It's as if it was the first day of preseason. What that means, we are going to run our most basic lines and pairs. We are going to run what we have run most frequently this season. But what that also means is we are going to ride the hot hand. We are going to get back to our fundamentals, and we are going to stick to our fundamentals. We got to crawl before we walk. We got to walk before we run. Right now, the Oilers are not doing any of those things. They are on their back like a turtle on their back. They are not playing good hockey. And when you tip them back over, you think about a toddler getting on their hands and knees for the first time to crawl. You got to get them over. You got to get them learning to figure out, hey, we got to get over here so we could start to crawl. If we're laying on our back, we can't do anything. And right now, the Oilers need something to get going. And I can't tell you if this is a kick in the butt group or if this is a hug group. I know it depends on guy to guy. I know in my own life, sometimes I need a kick in the butt and sometimes I need someone to tell me it's going to be okay. And because of that, it's hard to know as a coach. You can't do the Herb Brooks breathe fire, I need you to be a hockey player thing anymore in today's day and age, because guys see through that. They know you can only play that card once. The clean slate idea, this only works once. You can't erase the slate more than once in a season, because then guys are going to get into bad habits. And that's really the conundrum in such a long season, because if you're a coach, you don't want to read anything too deeply into 1, 2, even 3 games, because that's not a big enough sample to make decisions off of. You want to make decisions off of weeks, months worth of games, because that feels more accurate. That feels more detailed, in depth. And right now, the Oilers are playing a very sloppy, disorganized, and over effort. That's the thing. And I know a lot of people say, well, their effort wasn't good. I think, if anything, when you see a team that is having these type of structural issues, I think more often than not, they're trying too hard. They're trying to score the 3-goal goal. This isn't basketball. You can't score a 3. You got to get them in the net one at a time. When guys start trying to do too much, they start playing outside of structure. That forces the other guys to play outside of structure. Then the structure breaks down, and then everyone's freelancing. And if everyone is freelancing, whether it's on a forecheck, whether it's on a breakout, when everyone starts to freelance their decisions of, oh, well, he's doing this, I got to do this, you start to play too fast. You start to play 1,000 miles an hour. You can't make your decisions properly. Or the inverse of that, because the structure is broken down and because everyone's kind of doing their own thing, guys have to take that extra beat of, oh, well, he's not here, so I have to do this, and that means I have to do that. Right now, I cannot emphasize this clearly and straightforwardly enough. The Oilers need to get to their game, and they need to simplify things drastically. Whatever that means, lines and pairs. I would like to see Jeff Skinner back in. In an ideal world, I would like to see the Oilers run Skinner, McDavid, Hyman. I would like to see the Oilers run Podkolzin, Draisaitl, Arvidsson. I would like to see the Oilers run Nugent-Hopkins, Henrique, Connor Brown, Janmark, whoever you want to put in that fourth line center role, and Corey Perry. If you want to moonlight Corey Perry on Draisaitl's wing or on McDavid's wing, sure. Get back to what worked for long stretches of the season. Go from there. Start trying to build your foundation back out again. We are going with that clean slate mentality. We need to find ways to make plays, because right now we're not making any plays. We are making it harder on ourselves. We make it harder on ourselves, makes it easier for the other guy. And this is the National Hockey League. Even the bad teams, if you give them chances, they will kick your butt. Carolina is no easy customer. as much as being made about, are they going to keep Mikko Rantanen? Mikko Rantanen is a hell of a hockey player, even though he hasn't played great since getting there. Aho, Svechnikov, that team is good. Carolina, for all of their faults, for all of their inability to win a big playoff game, that's a good team. And the thing about Carolina, they keep things as simple as possible. Dump, chase, high, low, high, point shot, crash the net, rebound, crash the net, high, low, crash the net, shot, crash the net, shot. Carolina is the most annoying team in the entire NHL to play because they are maddeningly simple in what they do. They outwork you, they wear you down. For an Oilers team that's been slow, that looks a little bit frazzled, this is going to be a really tough customer. This is about as bad a matchup style-wise as you're going to get for an Oilers team that has talent. It's not that the Oilers are untalented. It's that their guys are lacking a little bit of confidence. It's a little bit of Murphy's Law. And this is a low point in the season. The season is not over. The Oilers are not doomed. They do need to lock in. But that will just about do it for today's show. So if you could be so kind, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening over on Apple or Spotify, drop the show a 5-star review. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Let me know, how worried are you? Should I be more worried than I am? We shall see what happens over the weekend. I will talk to you guys on Monday. And real quick, thanks for making Locked On Oilers your first listen of the day. If you could be so kind, go check out Locked On NHL. Make that your second listen of the day. All of Locked On's best local experts with the analysis and detail that you love. Check it out wherever you get your podcasts. I will see you guys on Monday. Everyone have a safe and fun weekend. Until Monday, let's go Oilers.